Hello, this is Jorge Olson once again for Beverage Analysis, information for entrepreneurs, investors, and beverage industry analysts on Wall Street. We're also going to talk about the non-alcoholic cannabis beverage market in Canada and how mainstream companies like Molson Coors sent a press release that they are entering into that space. How much is that market worth? What's the strategy? How are they going to distribute the product? And what it means for US companies, both in cannabis and non-cannabis. Cannabis is huge all over the world. It is huge in the investment community, especially in Canada, where it's legal now nationally, and a lot of things are happening. But even the US is even affected by the Canadian markets because a lot of the companies in the US are going public in Canada. A lot of the investment in US cannabis companies, including beverage and non-beverage, are coming from companies that are public in Canada, even if those companies are US based. In other words, you have some US based companies that cannot go public in the US, so they go public in Canada, and they raise capital all over the world. Now, the news item is cannabis drinks in Canada will be in ready to go position, is the quote by Molson Coors CEO. What does this mean? It means that Molson Coors in Canada is going to carry in the mainstream distribution is going to carry cannabis infused drinks. Now, first note about cannabis infused drinks, they're non-alcoholic, so they're not beer. You cannot infuse beer, that's still illegal. You cannot mix both of them so far. What is the market potential? The top tier of market potential for Canada, for the beverage market, is $2 billion. $2 billion is currently the estimated market for beverages in Canada. It's a huge market, especially for somebody like Coors, like Molson Coors, who has a lot of distribution into premise, non-premise, etc. This is big not only for Canada. This is big not only for beverage companies. We help beverage companies in the US and Canada all over the world. We have them as clients. We have cannabis beverage companies as clients that are going to call Molson Coors to see if they can be listed in their portfolio. So it's huge for us personally. It's huge for the companies that we represent, that we're shareholders in. But it's also huge for the future of cannabis all over the world, not just in Canada, but also in the continent, in Mexico, the US and Canada, but in Europe and worldwide, because this is an example of what's to follow. I think this is going to follow in the US, especially in California, in Denver, Colorado, and other early adopters. Then it's going to be followed by Mexico nationwide, and then it's going to follow by the US nationwide. That's my analyst position on it. Mexico already announced that they want to go the legal way with cannabis. That includes beverages. And we are already seeing beverage companies go statewide in the USA. The company that we represent or that we help in the US currently, and we're shareholders, is now sold throughout the state of California. Now imagine if it's positioned as one of the first to market companies, what's going to happen when it's legal all over the state of California. California is the #1 market for beverages, so you can imagine if it's sold everywhere. Early adopters are going to be funded by other huge companies. It could be mainstream companies, or it can be publicly traded companies that are trading in Toronto, for example. Now, what's the move here for analysts? The move for analysts is start keeping an eye on smaller cannabis companies in the beverage space. These companies are the companies that are going to be listed first in state-by-state distribution through cannabis distributors into dispensaries. Secondly, into the mainstream once cannabis can be sold in other stores. It could be mainstream stores, convenience stores, supermarket, etc. Those companies will be positioned with their supply chain, will have the legal permits in place, and hopefully they'll have the funding to go statewide and then nationwide. So even if now they're small and they're being limited by law, they can change like that, just like it did in Canada. So that's the move there. It is easy to see what the market will be for the large companies in Canada. You already know that it's a potential $2 billion market. You already know the distributor. You already know, if you read their press releases, what they can offer in the future. So that's not a play because everybody else is following the same news. The play is with the other companies. Follow them and see who's interested in these smaller, especially US companies in major states like California and Colorado. What's the play for investors? Investors, look for these small companies. Look for companies that you can invest at still not crazy valuations. So these companies that are selling or getting into accounts don't have a $100 million valuation, $50 million valuation. They still have under $5 million valuations that you can get a lot for your dollar immediately when they become public, because for a lot of them, this is the play right now, either through a registration or reverse merger or by an investment from one of these large publicly traded companies in Toronto. That's your exit. Your exit can be sooner than you think. So if you're an investor, check for these companies. We have a few that we can share with you. So if you hit us on Messenger, we can share those with you on Facebook Messenger, and we'll provide the companies that work with us so you can take a look. If you are an entrepreneur, there's a different play there. If you're an entrepreneur, the play is launch companies that you can position right now in the cannabis market, wherever you live in the state, that can be acquired, or they can receive investment from these large companies. Imagine what's going to happen if you're positioned, even if you only have 50, 100 accounts. In California, there's only about 250 legal dispensaries in the entire state. The laws are changing. For example, I live in the city of Chula Vista in San Diego, and on Tuesday we're going to vote to open, I believe, 13 new dispensaries just in Chula Vista. So that, you would say that's only 13, it's not a lot. But imagine if this happens in every city in the state. We can go from 250 to 350 or 500 dispensaries in a week. So the market is medium, and it can be huge after one election if these cities, or whatever these cities, vote to open more dispensaries. Now I'm talking legal dispensaries. We have a lot of dispensaries in Chula Vista, but they don't have the proper permits. So I'm talking about dispensaries that have all of the legal permits. We have around 250 as of this recording. That's important to say. So the play for entrepreneurs is, it doesn't matter if there's only 50 dispensaries, 100, 10 dispensaries in your city or state. If you position yourself and your product in these dispensaries now, once the floodgates open, you will be one of the only ones that have the permit, the distribution, the logistics, the supply chain to get the investment, go national, and then have a quick exit if that's what you desire. Once again, my name is Jorge Olson. I am a beverage analyst, coach, and consultant. I work with entrepreneurs. I work with large companies, with publicly traded companies, and I also work with investors and analysts in the beverage industry and consumer packaged goods. You can get my book, Build Your Beverage Empire, now in second edition on Amazon as Kindle, paperback, or hardcover. Bye from Jorge Olson in San Diego, California. See you next time.